Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and thank you for stopping by again. And before I forget, because I often do forget these things, just a shout out here of appreciation to Alejandro Carvalho, who is responsible for the photograph of the sunset over Panama City and the bay and the Cinta Costera, the coastal beltway, part of it at least, that is on the website for this particular video. And it's very kind of Alejandro to make this available to share with everybody. So, where are we now in terms of the virus? Well, we carry on. Nothing terribly exciting. We've had an increase in cases. It's not been enough to trigger off any really negative news or decisions, nor are any anticipated. I really don't think. I think we've done pretty well. I think people have done quite well in trying to control this thing. Now, we do have a challenge coming up here in a couple of days. This is the 6th of December. The 8th of December is Mother's Day here in Panama. And it's the second largest gift-giving day of the year. Only Christmas surpasses it. And anybody who's a mother, grandmother, ever been a mother, is in the process of becoming a mother, or whatever. And so taken to dinner and all sorts of things are done and gifts given and what have you. So that goes on the 8th, and which is, of course, a Tuesday this year. And it's a holiday. It's a public holiday. The banks will close. So Mom's Day is a pretty important day here. Also, but we're hoping people will not infect Mom. Actually, I think people will handle that pretty well. Remember, a lot of grandmothers, for example, actually live with their families. I mean, some grandfathers as well. So this is something they deal with on a daily basis. But they can be more complex than that when a broader family gets together and everyone's having to deal with it. And people are, I think, are doing better than I expected, to tell you the truth. I think they're doing reasonably well. We have some people who get a little sloppy along the line, but in some areas of the country might have to get closed down earlier, get a day, when they're locked down for a day, Sunday, something like that. That's possible if things get out of hand. We had one province that things got out of hand, basically young people, understandably, having the problems here. But when it was pointed out to them that this might be another quarantine period down here for that particular area, it stopped. And they really did apparently turn things around. So on the whole, we're always looking for something better, but we're doing well, and we'll hope that this carries us through, not just Mother's Day, but right on through the holiday season. So that's where we stand with that. Foreigners are coming down. People are looking around. They're traveling around. They're looking at real estate. Some of them have already found things. But there's just a few that, in my experience, not lots, and nobody's complaining about too many coming down, I can assure you. And that's not a surprise. It's particularly difficult for the U.S. because of the trouble people have up there in getting their COVID tests done in a timely fashion, and it costs so much money. I mean, the whole thing is amazing. But in any event, it has made it more difficult for them to get down. But now we are beginning to have people, and that's the important thing. And we're coming in from different parts of the world. One thing about the arrival of folks, this website is nothing about politics. It has no intention of being Panamanian or otherwise. A lot of people assume that this is an American website because I'm an American and I speak obviously American English, so it's assumed that I'm speaking to Americans and so on. This is not an American website. This is a global website. It has been for 16 years. It was set up with that. It happens to be in the English language because it has to be. But that's it. Otherwise, it is completely wide open. And so members, I call you members, at least in a retirement way, and subscribers here at YouTube, come from all over. I mean, dozens of countries. I mean, it's just an amazing variety of people who come by to visit and who write at me. And it's been a very, very difficult time in this world. The pandemic has certainly not helped things. And part of that has been the politics that have gone on in other countries. Now everyone's familiar with the American election situation. I mean, that's certainly something that everybody couldn't help but notice. But there's plenty more going on. And I know that right now we're concerned, some members are very concerned about Brexit and the situation between the United Kingdom and the European Union, which is coming to another one of its critical periods. Then, of course, I've heard plenty about the internal political situations in countries like Italy and Spain and France and so forth that have supplied us with quite a few people. And Asians, they have their own. But the ones that really have been explosively loud here, noticeable to us, even more so than the Americans, are the Latin Americans. And so we're like an island in the sea here. We are surrounded by so much social and political and economic upheaval that it's just really hard to keep on top of it all. It's just to keep track of it. Let me tell you, it's just been very unfortunate. So as a result, I am constantly being drawn into conversations on all sorts of different political issues, and I have the same response to all of them. No, we don't deal with that here. I'm a resident of Panama, and this is about Panama, and it's going to stay with that. And I have blessings on all the rest of you, and I hope somehow or other everybody gets what they want. But I can't do that for them, and this is not the right place. The reason I raise this is that when you come down, when you come to visit, and what have you, and again, this is not just the Americans who seem to think this is always about them. It's not. It can be Spaniards as well. We don't need to hear about your problems. Now, Panamanians are very much aware of what's going on in other countries, and they do follow very carefully. Very carefully, as much as anybody does in any country. But they're very much aware of it, far more so than you might think. But they don't really want to get involved with other people's politics. They really, really don't. And that's an actual true thing. All through its history, Panama has been a safe haven. So all sorts of people have come here who have had difficulties back home and who are politically controversial people and have found their haven here. Those of you who are, those of us, I certainly am old enough to remember the Shah of Iran may have forgotten the fact that this is one place he came to seek refuge for a while after he departed Tehran, not for a long period, but it was not unusual for Panama to provide a home. I had at least one Guatemalan president here, and maybe a couple, and from various and sundry nations. And the rule is you're welcome to have very strong political views about your own nation, but you keep them to yourself and to others like yourself who have similar interests. You don't ever let them allow them to get in the way of the rest of us and become issues here. We would be swamped in them if we allowed everybody to go running around doing that. We're very firm on this. A few years ago, this is back when Hugo Chavez was still the president of Venezuela. Now, the one political issue that the Panamanian government has made itself clear on is their opposition to the Chavez and then followed by that the Maduro regimes in Venezuela. This has been a matter of record for a long time through several administrations. So that is very, very uncommon. In fact, that's the only one that comes to mind immediately at all that this government will make public comments and statements regarding. So there's no doubt about that. But we are home to Venezuelans from both sides and always have been. Many people didn't even notice the problems in Venezuela until 2015 is actually when they started counting the refugees. In fact, I did the first statistical thing on it back in to indicate that here in Panama, the influx of refugees began in 2009. It's a very noticeable change in the arrivals here, and it continued on after that. So we have a very large segment of Venezuelans who live here, and they're welcome. They fit in. We've managed to absorb them, and we've absorbed Nicaraguans and Hondurans and Antigos and our friends from Costa Rica and so forth over time. We do our best to. And sometimes it's difficult for them because they come from countries that are much, much more likely to have violent political conflict. We don't have that here. We don't want it. So it so happened that a student group at the University of Panama some years ago invited some representatives of the Venezuelan government to come and to make their pitch, their presentation on what they were doing in Venezuela. And of course, this was a public affair. And word was out. And a large group, I don't remember any of the details now, but a large group of Venezuelans who very much opposed that regime showed up, and they were very angry. And there was a lot of anger expressed on both sides. And the police had to intervene. I don't think anything got completely out of hand, but it was apparent that it could have if it didn't actually do it. And that was just one incident at the University of Panama. The next day, the president went on television, and he spoke about that specific thing, and he said very bluntly to the Venezuelan community, "You're welcome here. We understand your problems, and we know you're looking for a place where you can be secure and safe and raise your families. And we're happy that you are come here to Panama, but we don't accept this kind of behavior, and this will not happen again. And if anybody we ever get involved in this again, they will be sent home." So as long as that's clear and you understand that's how we do things in Panama, and it's true, we just don't get involved in public explosive behavior. You shouldn't either. And I know, except among yourselves, of course, but please, not for the rest of us. People feel very strongly on it. It's when expats are funny. When we started to have the lockdown here, the quarantine, whatever you want to call it, within a matter of a couple of weeks, some of the expats, some of them who've lived here for a number of years, no less, started talking about, oh, there's going to be riots, there's going to be trouble, there's even going to be a civil war. This sort of stuff. Oh, my God, people will not put up with this, and on and on and on. And that was, 8-9 months ago? Now, it didn't work out that way. But they were convinced, well, that is not how we do things here. If they haven't figured that out here, they're really out of touch. They're really out of touch. Because this is not what we do. And when it does happen, the next day, and it's happened when Panamanians have gotten out of hand themselves in past years, the next day, boy, the society as a whole comes down like a ton of brick on them for having done anything that's considered disruptive, certainly if it's considered violent. So we have a radically different situation than is true in pretty much every other Latin American country. And we've got to have that in order to keep ourselves together as one community, one working together, and keep the country growing. And as I've told you before, this is a business country. So if we're going to move forward with that, then we need to be focused on that. So help us do that. And it's the best for you, too, is when you come down. Wherever you come from and whatever the disputes you have at home, leave them behind, or at least pack them up and leave them off on one side somewhere. Come here and relax and try to get away from some of the tension and the anxiety, and live in Panama. And I think that you'll be a lot happier for that, and so will we. But just something to mention, because we have this problem with newcomers quite frequently, and we just need to, it's not a problem, it's just a misunderstanding on their part that that's not how we act. I know other societies do when they read about what goes on in the streets of Bogota or Santiago or places like that, all sorts of rioting, and it's not us. Okay, let's keep that in mind and use that. It's good. It's good politics, so to speak, wherever you go in the world. Now, another thing regarding, I will be talking again about, I just have to continue repeating it. Many of you are new, you're coming down, you're just starting. I keep forgetting, having done this for 16 years, I forget that a lot of folks come in and they are starting from absolute zero. Don't feel badly about it. Everybody starts from absolute zero who comes in from outside, me included, of course, everybody. So you're following the footsteps of many hundreds of thousands of people before you over the decades. Now, when you do get down there, some people have very strong feelings about lawyers and real estate agents. Well, first thing to be clear on, if you're looking for a residency visa, which I expect most of you will be, or if not all, you will have to have a lawyer. It's required. And that's because they do not want people who don't even speak Spanish, trying to do it on their own. I mean, what a mess it would be. At first I thought, no, I don't like that. Then I realized, yes. Otherwise we'd never get these things through migration. Sorry. It is definitely the right way to go. They're doing the right thing. We must work with people who know exactly what is required and get it done so that the darn thing, the system works. It's a bureaucracy, for God's sakes. You work it. It's a business country, guys. You take care of business. All right? So that's one way you do it. Also, very definitely want to remind people that if you're going to sign a contract, particularly for the purchase of a property, but even a rental per contract, since you're probably talking to a lawyer at least about a visa or whatever, this is one thing you want that lawyer to look into. Now, the rental agreement is pretty straightforward. He can read that, or she can read that, and decide to very quickly find anything that looks unusual. Your agent can also help with that, but I always have the lawyer take a look at it. Just make sure there's not something odd in there. If the refrigerator breaks down, I don't want to be the one, if I'm renting, to have to replace it, obviously. But if I don't understand that and don't understand Spanish, then I may just get a big disappointment down the road, right? Want to avoid that. Doesn't happen often, but it's the sort of thing you just don't, why mess around? Just get it done. Likewise, but very importantly, with the purchase of a home, a lawyer can, in a very brief period, quite easily, because they are given access to the computers, the internet, through the internet, to the register, the property registry, the tax authorities, and everything else. When you come and you have a particular property you're looking at, they can find out, are there any tax liens against this? Is there a mortgage outstanding here? Is there any problem with the owner or whatever? Is there anything that is going to cause you any kind of problem? And that is due diligence. You cannot do that on your own. You don't have access to that information. Only lawyers do, because you can't have everybody going in and getting the private information of everybody else. We do take privacy here fairly seriously. So as a result, it's very important you do that. And I could tell you lots of stories. I won't make it a long story. I'll just tell you very briefly. To have had a couple come in here, this is years ago, but it came during a period of enthusiasm for purchasing properties here, which we may end up in the coming months. Again, who knows? We'll find out. But the key point is they really wanted the place, and they had convinced themselves that it could be taken any time, and they might lose it if they didn't immediately take advantage of it. They signed a contract, and they had $30,000 wire transferred down into the account of the owner without ever setting foot in a lawyer's office or talking to a lawyer. It was after that they discovered that this person, an expat I might add, was in court on charges of drug dealing. Right? And that they had just made a $30,000 contribution to his account, and although it was frozen, his accounts were frozen. And he couldn't get to them, but of course, if he could get out of this situation, there was an extra $30,000 to help pay for his lawyers, right? Well, they wanted their money back. They wanted it immediately. Well, I'm sorry. They signed the contract. They shipped the money down. And when they wrote me, outraged, absolutely outraged. Panamanians are all thieves and liars and everything else. And they said, our lawyer doesn't even answer our calls anymore. She won't get back to us. And when I worked through all the emotion, I read all the details that they saw fit to share with me. I began to realize what was going on. But I didn't say anything. I just wrote back and I said, you have a real problem here, and it's with the original lawyer. Because this never should have happened. It would not have happened. Any lawyer would have discovered this almost instantly and told you, don't even come near this. But it turned out, hadn't gone to a lawyer. And that's what I suspected. I said, I couldn't believe any lawyer would be so incompetent as to miss that. And if that had been the case, they'd have gotten disbarred. I mean, it would be so stupid. But they started a little campaign of attacks on Panama and Panamanians and the press in the U.S. and then their congressmen and everything else. Not that it made any difference at all. It didn't. And the embassies, sorry, you signed. You had your opportunities. You know? So I'm telling you, do you that? The money you spend on getting that done properly, with having that agreement checked out very carefully and understanding exactly what it is you're buying, so to speak, and under what circumstances, is worth its weight in gold. And even if nothing is found, knowing that there's nothing in there to be worried about is a blessing in itself. Not knowing until it's too late is not a blessing. Okay, so this is lawyers. Now, real estate agents, the same basic thing here. We don't have a multiple listing service in the sense that you're familiar with in the U.S. and Canada, but they don't have that in most of the world. We have beginnings of one here, but it's not there yet. Agents played a critical role here because, especially during the pandemic. But I mean, you don't just, if you're a Latin American and you find an advertisement in the newspaper with a telephone, you pick up the phone and call the person and say, I'd like to see your house. That's legitimate. But otherwise, and you're not that, you get an agent and you explain what you want. Since you don't know your way around and you don't know the city and you don't know what the price is or the country or wherever you may be. And you have them find places. They do the work, and it's work of setting up an appointment, calling either the owner or the owner's agent, another real estate agent, getting everybody on board for a particular time in a particular location, which in the city can be sometimes a little challenging just to get everybody sorted out depending on where they are physically located at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in that particular day. But out in the countryside too, it can be some distances separating people. So you have that person, the agent puts it all together, gets you there, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if it's interesting, it's interesting. So she can help you, or he, all the way through that process. And if you've got a good person, that's why I offered it, but it's no big deal. I don't care at all. But, I have 3 agents that I've worked with personally and trust solely. So if you need that kind of person and we can help, I do that. There's no cost to you at all. But I'm not pushing this. If I was pushing anything, you'd be hearing from me every week by newsletter, video, and everything else. It's just there. Because I saw so many people mess up, so to speak, in the first big boom of, say, 10, 12 years ago. That was amazing. It was very unfortunate. A lot of people paid way too much money for what they were getting. That was particularly true in the city. Less so perhaps out in the countryside, although they certainly had their share of problems too. But here it was because it's just overwhelming. There's so many properties, so many locations. So these people, these lawyers and these agents, you're getting decent ones. You get good ones, they can make a lot of difference to you. They can make your life a lot easier. And so if you got one and you just really think that person is not doing the job, then you go on to someone else. You be patient, work with them, but you expect them to do their duty, so to speak, to you, and you should. So don't fight the idea of having to use a lawyer, or do your best to find somebody. You can ask people, get references from expats you run into here in town. Everybody's got stories, about the lawyer they really like and so on. That's the easiest way to go about doing it. There's certainly lots of lawyers out here who can handle that. And also keep one last thing in mind is that when you do talk to a lawyer, ask them for a specific task like a visa, for a breakdown of costs of what you're paying for and so on, because they will provide that. And they will differ from time to time. And some lawyers will go through the whole process with you themselves. Others will assign a junior person in the office who may or may not be fully bilingual, but may be earnest and well-meaning person, but not necessarily the same as having the lawyer do it. So that can be cheaper. That can be one way to save a little money on it, and I'm not always sure it works out to the best. I think they always get it done eventually, but it may not be quite as smooth. That's the impression I've gotten. Whatever. These are some things I wanted to share with you as you're beginning to consider coming down, and as we have, was this season of the year. And the winter months are coming, and there are already people down. More will be coming, and I hope that you're included among them. I hope that you'll be able to do that we'll all be able to move around, and that this pandemic thing will slowly but surely take care of itself, and we can keep, get back to growing again. And that, the first shoots, so to speak, the first sign of that is here. There's no question. But we got a long ways to go too, so we're working hard at it. Thanks again for your patience and my long gaps sometimes. I take my time and I listen to people, I talk to a lot of people, and I've got more to share, but I don't share it until I feel very comfortable that I have got something worthwhile to say. In the meantime, have a wonderful evening or day or whatever it is that faces you at this point. And thank you so much for stopping by. If you haven't subscribed, feel free to subscribe and click on the bell, and you'll get an immediate notification, that they say, of a new video going out. And thank you so much for dropping by. You're really important people, and I think the world of you. Thanks.